The series begins in a high school where we see the teacher giving a lesson, but all the students are asleep, except for one student who is the only one paying attention, writing down everything the teacher says. The teacher even insults the students, and he writes that down too. We learn that his name is Yoon, and he wears glasses. At first glance, he looks like a top student. Despite studying hard and desperately wanting to rank first, he always ends up with terrible grades, finishing last. Even as a child, he took private lessons and studied day and night, but it was all in vain. When he enters high school, he decides to start fresh, aiming for high scores so he can get into his dream college. On his first day, he walks into the classroom full of excitement, only to be shocked that he is the only one wearing the uniform and following the rules. Meanwhile, half of the students are fighting, and the other half are smoking. Despite everything, Yoon ends up ranking second to last, basically the biggest failure in the class. He feels frustrated because he still can't become number one, but he refuses to give up. Determined to improve, he decides to find a study partner to motivate each other. The next day, he searches among the students until he finds a disciplined student named Kim. He approaches him and asks if they can study together, but before Kim can answer, a delinquent suddenly attacks him. A huge fight breaks out among the students. This is because the school follows a ranking system where each student is ranked based on their strength. The delinquent wins the fight, which raises his rank in the class to 170. At this moment, Yoon realizes that the number he saw yesterday wasn't an exam score. It was his ranking in terms of strength. After that, the class supervisor enters and informs the students that a new teacher has been transferred here and will be teaching them. However, when she walks in, the students are shocked by her beauty. It turns out that Yoon knows her because she used to tutor him when he was younger and always encouraged him to succeed. The teacher begins taking attendance, but the students welcome her in their own way. One of them throws food at the board while the others laugh and mock her. Suddenly, a student named Hwang wakes up. He is the strongest student in the class and ranks number one in fighting. He walks over to the student who threw the food and slaps him. The students are amazed by his strength while the teacher is shocked by what's happening and tries to stop the fight. Hwang orders everyone to return to their seats, and they obey. Then, he goes back to sleep. The teacher is bewildered by how strange this class is. After the lesson, she goes to empty the trash can and is surprised to find it filled with cigarette butts. She realizes that the students smoke freely in the schoolyard. Meanwhile, Yoon approaches her. She is happy to see him all grown up, but he asks if she is planning to resign. She responds, "Why would I resign?" He tells her that none of the previous teachers lasted more than a month. She confidently replies that she doesn't give up easily and encourages him to do the same. Her words motivate him, and he promises to study hard and succeed. Later, Yoon goes to the smart student Kim and asks him to study together. Yoon keeps following him everywhere, insisting, until Kim is surprised by his persistence and finally agrees. Kim begins explaining the problems to Yoon, but soon realizes that Yoon just writes down everything the teacher says word for word. This makes Kim realize that Yoon is actually not very smart. He tells him that studying is pointless in this school and reveals the real system. Fighting is the most important thing here. Kim explains that the school owner is a gang leader, and his son created an app that ranks students based on their strength. Each student has a rank, and since Yoon is weak, his rank is second to last. After saying this, Kim walks away. Meanwhile, teacher Han goes to the principal and asks him to stop the students from smoking in school. He mocks her, saying, "You can try if you want. I already did, and I couldn't stop them." Then, he lights a cigarette in front of her and tells her to focus on her job and not interfere in anything else. In the bathroom, the smart student Kim is washing his face when someone suddenly hits him. Thinking it's Yoon bothering him again, he curses at him, but he is shocked to see that it's actually Hwang, the strongest student in the class. Kim quickly apologizes, but Hwang doesn't accept his apology and starts beating him up. Meanwhile, teacher Han hears someone groaning in pain. When she looks, she sees Hwang and a few students attacking Kim, so she rushes over to save him. But suddenly, Yoon arrives and stops her, telling her that he will be the one to rescue Kim. Yoon puts on a mask to hide his face and enters the scene with a fire extinguisher. He sprays Hwang and the troublemakers, successfully rescuing Kim and escaping with him. The teacher is impressed by what he did, but Kim scolds him for saving him. Kim is terrified of Hwang, knowing that as the strongest student in the class, he will come after him again for being rescued. Determined to avoid further trouble, Kim decides to apologize to Hwang. However, when he approaches him, Hwang immediately beats him up and demands to know who the masked person was. Kim refuses to reveal Yoon's identity. Hwang, furious, prepares to strike Kim with a bat, but just in time, Yoon arrives and stands in front of Kim to protect him. He manages to block Hwang's attack. A flashback reveals that Yoon has been training for a long time, working out every day to the point that he has developed unnatural strength. He trains not just to fight, but also to strengthen his mind so he can study better and become the top student. Back in the present, Hwang underestimates Yoon, thinking he is weak. But when they fight, Yoon defeats him in less than a second. Afterward, he checks on Kim and asks him to form a study group together, promising to protect him. However, Kim refuses, believing that Yoon only defeated Hwang by sheer luck. He calls Yoon a coward for wearing a mask and walks away. Yoon is hurt by his words. When he returns home, he remembers his childhood, how he repeatedly tried to start a study group, but was always rejected because he always ranked last. This led him to lock himself in his room and cry, with his mother trying to comfort him. Snapping out of his memories, Yoon refuses to give up and decides to try again with Kim. The next day, Teacher Han arrives at school on time and sees students smoking cigarettes near some barrels. However, the class supervisor orders them to go to their classroom. Seeing this, she feels relieved, thinking that someone finally shares her views. She approaches him to ask for his help, but he tells her that a ministry inspector is visiting the school. Instead of stopping the students, he asks her to hide the barrels so the inspector won't find out that students smoke on campus. After saying this, he walks away, leaving her frustrated. She is shocked by his words but is forced to comply because she doesn't want the students to get punished. She tries to move the barrels, but they are too heavy. A student named Park comes over to help her and tells her that she won't be able to change the school on her own. She replies that at least she will try to do her part. Meanwhile, Yoon enters the classroom and finds a notebook containing study notes. He realizes it belongs to the smart student Kim. He goes to thank him and once again asks him to form a study group. Suddenly, Hwang arrives and attacks Yoon, having figured out that Yoon was the masked person who defeated him the previous day. Hwang grabs Kim's notebook and sets it on fire. Yoon sees what's happening and gets furious. He tries to put out the fire, but Hwang attacks him. However, Yoon easily blocks his attacks and knocks him to the ground. The students are stunned and impressed by Yoon's strength. Yoon rushes to save the notebook, but it's already burned. Angry, he demands that Hwang apologize, but Hwang refuses and throws a flaming bag at him. Yoon catches it and throws it back at Hwang, knocking him out. The students realize that Yoon is an expert in fighting, and many of them had never even noticed his presence in the class before. Kim is deeply moved by the fact that Yoon did all of this for him. He approaches Yoon and finally agrees to join his study group. Yoon is overjoyed and thanks him. Just then, Teacher Han enters the classroom and puts out the burning bag. Moments later, the principal enters with the inspector. Seeing the scene, the principal calls Yoon to his office and decides to punish him by expelling him. However, Teacher Han steps in, explaining that Yoon was only defending himself. She argues that the school is full of bullies, and it is their duty as teachers to help guide them onto the right path. The inspector is impressed by her words and agrees with her suggestion. They decide to give Yoon a second chance, following Teacher Han's proposal to create a study group to help improve the students' academic performance. Meanwhile, a group of delinquent students drags Hwang out of the classroom and takes him to the rooftop. There, he meets the son of the gang leader, the person who created the school's fight ranking app. As punishment for losing, the gang leader's son decides to discipline Hwang. The next day, Yoon wakes up early and goes to train to increase his strength. It is revealed that this is a daily routine for him. After finishing, he returns home and pretends to be asleep so that his mother doesn't suspect anything. Later, he heads to school and meets the smart student Kim. Together, they go to Teacher Han's office, but she informs them that they need a total of 5 students to officially form a study group. She gives them exactly 2 weeks to recruit more members. They are shocked and feel discouraged since they still need 3 more students. However, Teacher Han suggests that they make an announcement at school to attract students to join. Yoon likes the idea and puts up an announcement, but none of the students show any interest. They simply don't want to study. Later, Yoon and Kim sit in the library and decide to use it as their base. Suddenly, a delinquent student barges in. He is ranked 3rd in fighting and has come to challenge Yoon in order to increase his ranking and become the strongest in the class. He attacks Yoon, but Yoon, believing that the student wants to join the study group, unknowingly dodges his punches while searching for an application form. By accident, Yoon lands a hit, knocking the student to the ground. Seeing him on the floor, Yoon rushes to check if he's okay. Meanwhile, students outside witness the scene and mistakenly assume that Yoon defeated him in a single strike. The rumor spreads quickly across the school that Yoon defeated the 3rd-ranked fighter in less than a minute. After this, Yoon starts losing hope that anyone will join their group, so he decides to search for smart students himself. He claims that he can recognize them by looking into their eyes. However, when students see him approaching, they get scared and avoid eye contact, making Yoon confused. He thinks they simply don't want to study. Eventually, Yoon notices Park and learns from Kim that Park used to study in America. Excited, Yoon approaches him and invites him to join the study group. However, Park thinks he's crazy since no one studies at this school and walks away. Feeling discouraged, Yoon sits with Kim in the library, hoping that someone will eventually join them. Suddenly, Teacher Han enters and notices that they look sad. She decides to cheer them up by taking them out to eat. She buys them their favorite food, then treats them to ice cream, and they spend a fun time together. She encourages them not to give up before leaving. Later that night, when she gets home, she notices that Yoon forgot his book with her. She calls him to let him know, but he doesn't answer. At that moment, she is shocked to find her apartment door open. Upon entering, she finds Hwang waiting for her, looking beaten up and injured. She's surprised to see his face covered in wounds. Hwang tells her that Hyun, the gang leader's son, beat him up and ordered him to kidnap her. Terrified, she tries to call the police, but Hwang grabs her phone and takes out a metal rod. Just as he is about to attack her, he apologizes, saying that he has no choice. He must do this to save his own life. Suddenly, the power goes out, and a masked figure enters, fighting Hwang and his gang. He successfully defeats them and takes the teacher, escaping from the scene. When the teacher sees his face, she recognizes him as Park, the student who helped her at school before. He reassures her that he will protect her. However, they are soon shocked as Hwang and his gang surround them. The teacher is struck and loses consciousness. Park then begins fighting the gang alone despite their overwhelming numbers. However, one of the gang members lands a hit, knocking Park to the ground. Hwang seizes the opportunity and rushes to kidnap the teacher, but Yoon arrives just in time, attacking Hwang and pushing him away. He takes off his glasses, deciding to fight the gang by himself. The gang laughs at him, thinking he is weak, but Yoon charges at them one by one. He single-handedly defeats the entire gang, then puts his glasses back on and rushes to check on the teacher. Hwang attempts to attack him from behind, but Park intervenes just in time, ready to finish him off. However, Yoon stops him, preventing him from becoming a criminal. Park, frustrated, reveals that the gang killed his mother. Hwang takes advantage of the moment and quickly escapes. Park tries to chase after him but is too injured to continue. He tells the teacher to stay away from the gang before they kill her, like they did to his mother, then leaves, without giving any further details. Later, the teacher thanks Yoon and returns the book he left with her. She advises him to start focusing more on his studies and tells him to go to bed early for school the next day. After leaving Yoon, the teacher enters her apartment to rest. She considers calling the police to report the students but is suddenly interrupted by a knock on her door. It's one of the gang members apologizing to her. He confesses that the gang leader's son forced them to do everything. The teacher decides to forgive him, but only under the condition that he tells her everything he knows about the gang. The next day, Yoon goes to school and sits with his smart friend Kim in the library. Suddenly, he receives a message from a student saying they want to join the study group. Excited, he rushes to his classroom. He hesitates at first, but Kim encourages him to go in. However, Yoon is shocked when he discovers that the person who sent the message is a girl named Leon. Kim immediately panics when he hears her name, revealing that she is actually Hwang's twin sister, the notorious bully. He warns Yoon that she must be dangerous. At that moment, Leon is sitting in the classroom when a bully approaches her, insulting her. Leon remains silent and doesn't defend herself. However, when the bully snatches a neatly organized study schedule from her weak friend, Seema, Leon suddenly changes. She attacks the bully, protecting Seema. Angry, the bully knocks Leon to the ground, then approaches the study schedule and spits gum on it to ruin it. Suddenly, Yoon rushes in, grabs the schedule quickly, and is thrilled to see that some students actually want to study like him. He also notices that the study plan is professionally organized. The bully is confused by his reaction and asks, "Who are you?" Just then, a huge student named Lee enters and tells Yoon that Leon is his girlfriend. He orders Yoon to leave the classroom, or else he will beat him up. Kim, terrified because Lee is known to be extremely dangerous, grabs Yoon and quickly leaves. Afterward, Lee confronts Leon, scolding her for talking to another guy without his permission. He tells her that she must be punished, but if she doesn't want to be beaten, she can go out with him instead. Without hesitation, Leon chooses to be beaten. But before Lee can lay a hand on her, Yoon suddenly steps in to protect her. Lee laughs and mocks Yoon, saying, "You think you're strong just because you beat Hwang?" He grabs Yoon's glasses and lifts him up, preparing to strike him. However, at that moment, the school supervisor enters the classroom and informs Lee that the principal wants to see him. Lee is forced to comply, but before leaving, he puts Yoon's glasses back on him and promises that they will meet again. Then, he walks away. The girls are shocked by Yoon's boldness, staring at him in disbelief at his personality. After that, he returns to the library, where Kim warns him to stay away from Lee because he is dangerous. Suddenly, Seema, Leon's friend, walks in and sits with them. She reveals that she was the one who sent the message asking to join the study group. She explains that when she first joined the school, bullies tried to beat her up and steal her money, but Leon defended her. Everyone was afraid of Leon because she was strong. One day, however, her brother Hwang was on his way home from work when a gang suddenly attacked him and stole all his money. Because of this, he was forced to borrow money from Lee. Lee agreed, but he secretly recorded a video of Huang stealing to use as leverage, ensuring that Huang would obey him. Since then, Lee has been blackmailing Leon with the video, forcing her to follow his orders, or else he would turn Huang in and send him to jail. Because of this, the bullies started tormenting Leon again, and she no longer defended herself out of fear for her brother. Seema finishes her story and tells them, "I'm moving away from the school soon, but before I go, I want to ask you to help Leon. You need to delete the video of Huang that Lee recorded and include Leon in your study group." However, Kim immediately refuses because he is too scared. But when Seema gives him a pleading look, her eyes filled with cuteness, Kim weakens and gives in, agreeing to help. Seema then tells them that the video is stored in the disciplinary committee's room. Lee is a member of this group, which consists of students who are allowed to use violence. Yoon wants to go there immediately, but Kim warns him that the disciplinary committee is like a dangerous gang. Any outsider who enters gets beaten up. At that moment, we see two students attempting to enter the committee's room. However, Lee catches them, gets furious, and locks the room before fighting them. Within seconds, he takes them all down, only to realize that they were his own friends. Meanwhile, teacher Han learns that Huang has disappeared. She decides to meet with Hyun, the gang leader's son, and the most dangerous person in the school, essentially the main villain of the story. She confronts him saying, "I know you're manipulating students and I know you're using Huang because he owes you money." She then asks him where Huang is. Hyun, smirking, simply tells her he knows nothing before walking away. At that moment, Lee decides to expose Huang by publishing the video of him stealing, spreading it everywhere. But just as he is about to do so, Yoon suddenly jumps out from a closet where he was hiding. He quickly takes down Lee's assistants and tries to grab the flash drive containing the video. However, Lee grabs Yoon's legs and pulls him to the ground. Yoon laughs, successfully snatches the flash drive and puts it in his pocket before punching Lee, knocking him down. He then puts on his glasses and heads for the door, only to find more troublemakers waiting for him. They attack Yoon, trying to take the flash drive, but he fights back. Meanwhile, Lee regains consciousness and manages to upload the video online. At that moment, Leon learns about what's happening from the smart student, Kim. She rushes to help Yoon, but when she arrives, she is shocked to see him running out of the room with a computer, desperately trying to escape. However, he trips, and the computer falls to the ground right in front of Kim. Yoon quickly tells Kim to grab it and run. Kim, terrified of Lee, hesitates at first but then takes the computer and runs up to the rooftop. Lee follows him, trapping him and ordering him to hand over the computer, or else he will regret it. Kim refuses, and without a second thought, throws the computer off the rooftop, smashing it. Furious, Lee moves to attack Kim, but Leon suddenly appears behind him, smirking. "Surprise! You can't do anything to me now. The video is gone," she taunts before attacking him. Kim is shocked by her strength. Lee tries to counterattack, but Leon lifts him and slams him to the ground. At the same time, the school supervisor takes Yoon away for punishment. As Yoon walks, the flash drive falls from his pocket onto the ground. Seema, Leon's friend, sees it and rushes to pick it up. But before she can, the school bully girl snatches it first. She realizes it must be something valuable to Lee and smirks, saying, "He's going to be happy when I give him this." But Seema, gathering all her courage, charges at the bully with full force, punches her hard, and successfully takes the flash drive back. Just then, Leon arrives, sees what happened, and is overjoyed that they now have the flash drive. Meanwhile, Hyun, the gang leader, meets with Huang. He reveals to him that it was actually Lee who originally stole his money. He also tells Huang that Lee has been blackmailing his sister with the video ever since. Then, Hyun hands Huang a knife and orders him to kill Lee. Believing the story, Huang, filled with rage, rushes off to find Lee. As soon as he sees him, he charges at him, ready to end his life. However, at the last second, the teacher, Mrs. Han, steps in front of Lee and takes the stab instead. She collapses, but before losing consciousness, reassures Lee that she will help him. She now understands his and his sister's tragic past, how they grew up alone, relying only on themselves, and how that led them to this situation. Ms. Han then passes out. Yoon arrives just in time, rushing to her side. He quickly picks her up and takes her to the hospital, ultimately saving her life. Later, Leon visits Ms. Han at the hospital. She is relieved to see that she has regained consciousness. Tearfully, she apologizes for what her brother, Huang, did and begs the teacher to forgive him. Ms. Han smiles reassuringly and tells her not to worry. Then, she makes Leon an offer. If she joins Yoon's study group, she will forgive both her and Huang. Leon happily agrees. Afterward, they all return to school together. Yoon is overjoyed. He finally has friends to study with. But just as they are sitting in the library, a sudden crash startles them. A brick comes flying through the window, shattering the glass. Yoon looks outside and sees a delinquent student waiting for him below, challenging him to a fight. The student wants to defeat Yoon to increase his own ranking. But Yoon doesn't care. He simply says, "Consider yourself the winner." Angered by Yoon's indifference, the delinquent rips down Yoon's study group poster and threatens that he will beat up anyone who dares to join. Yoon gets furious, jumps out of the window, and knocks the delinquent out cold. All the students watching are shocked by Yoon's strength. One particular student is especially impressed. A flashback reveals his past. He was always weak and spent years training to become stronger. Yet, no matter how much he trained, he kept getting beaten by bullies. By the time he entered high school, he finally managed to defeat a significant number of students, reaching rank 17 in combat. However, he got stuck there, unable to progress further. Back in the present, after witnessing Yoon's incredible fighting skills, he decides to join Yoon's study group to learn from him. However, Yoon refuses, as he hates fighting and just wants to study. He kicks the student out of the library. The student, determined, promises that he will study with them. To test him, Yoon hands him a book and tells him to solve some problems. Then, Yoon leaves to visit Ms. Han at the hospital. As the student sits solving the problems, a notorious thug suddenly barges in and asks if he is Yoon. The student, nervous, lies and says yes. The thug orders him to come with him, and they drive off in a car to an abandoned warehouse. There, the thug introduces himself as a member of a well-known gang. His mission is to recruit the strongest students from every school. He decides to test the student's strength by presenting him with a challenge. He holds up a car key and tells him that if he can take it from him, he will be allowed to join the gang, become rich, and win the car as a reward. Suddenly, 3 gang members appear to stop him. Eager to prove himself, the student accepts the challenge and attacks. However, he is quickly beaten. Meanwhile, Yoon and his friends return to the library, only to find the student missing. They assume he gave up and left. Just then, Park rushes in, having witnessed everything, and informs them of what happened. Back at the warehouse, the thug continues beating the student for being weak and failing the test. He then realizes that the student had lied about being Yoon. Angry at being deceived, he decides to kill him. But suddenly, Yoon and his friends arrive just in time. Yoon reassures the injured student, telling him that he's now part of the group and they will protect him. The thug laughs mockingly at Yoon's words and decides to test their strength. He orders his gang members to attack. Leon takes on the first one and defeats him. Park fights the second and easily knocks him down. The third gang member attacks Yoon, but Yoon uses his study group poster as a weapon and takes him down with it. Then, Yoon charges at the thug himself. However, the thug effortlessly blocks his attack while standing still, then throws Yoon across the room. Yoon gets angry and prepares to fight with full force alongside his friends. But the thug turns out to be a skilled martial artist. He overpowers them all, knocking them to the ground. He then asks Yoon why he's risking himself to protect a weakling. Yoon, now furious, yells back, "Because he's my friend." With a burst of strength, he dashes at the thug and delivers a powerful punch, slamming him into the wall. The thug is unable to withstand the blow and falls unconscious. Yoon's friends are stunned by his strength. Yoon casually puts his glasses back on, but suddenly, a car pulls up to the warehouse. A young man steps out, impressed by Yoon's abilities. He offers Yoon a chance to join the gang and become their leader. Yoon refuses, declaring that he will continue his studies, succeed, and go to university. The young man mocks him, but, before leaving, reminds Park of his deceased mother. Enraged, Park jumps onto his motorcycle and chases after him. Soon after, the smart student arrives with the police. The officers arrest the gang members and take the injured student to the hospital. The detective thanks them, astonished that high school students were able to defeat such a dangerous gang. Yoon's friends, proud, tell the detective that Yoon did it all by himself. But when they turn around to look for him, Yoon is gone. At that time, Yoon returns home because his mother warned him not to be late past 10 p.m. He calls her to apologize for the delay. When he arrives home, he creates a group chat and adds his study group friends. They agree to start studying together the next day. The next day, they gather at the library and begin studying. But on their way to school, they are stopped by Lee, a member of the disciplinary committee. He tells them that their clothes violate the dress code and refuses to let them enter the school. Suddenly, Ms. Han arrives. She has been discharged from the hospital. She forces Lee to let them in, and they celebrate getting into school without using violence. Later, in the library, Ms. Han informs them that she will take them to Seoul the next day to meet another study group like theirs. She tells them to prepare, and they all agree. The next day, they meet at the scheduled time. But Ms. Han notices that Yoon is missing. She learns that he was delayed due to transportation issues. They decide to leave, and Yoon will catch up later. Ms. Han takes them to a prestigious school, where they enter the library and meet highly intelligent students who also have a study group. Yoon's friends start to worry about him since he is running late. Meanwhile, Yoon mistakenly arrives at an old, abandoned school. His friends feel embarrassed that he's late and try to engage with the smart students to get to know them. However, one of the students treats them arrogantly and walks out of the library. Leon gets annoyed, assuming that the girl looks down on them because she is smart and they are seen as failures. But another top student explains the truth. It's not about arrogance. He reveals that they too are bullied at their school. He points to an old school building and explains that there are violent bullies who attack them daily. At that moment, we see the bullies assaulting a top student to steal his money. They completely dominate the school, and it turns out to be the same school Yoon mistakenly entered. When Yoon arrives, he notices bloodstains on the floor. However, being clueless, he fails to realize that a fight took place. Instead, he assumes that the intelligent students study so hard that they don't even have time to go to the hospital. Excited, he rushes inside to find his friends. Instead, he comes across the bullies smoking. Still unaware he's in the wrong school, he casually approaches them and asks where the study group is. The bullies think he's crazy. One of them sneaks up from behind and tries to hit him with a fire extinguisher. Yoon dodges the attack and notices a pair of glasses on the ground. Realizing that the bullies have kidnapped a top student, he decides to help him. Yoon fights the bullies and successfully defeats all of them. He then breaks down the classroom door where the kidnapped student is being held and hands him back his glasses. Yoon receives a call from his friends informing him that he's at the wrong school and urging him to come quickly. Yoon decides to take the top student with him and leave, but suddenly, one of the bullies barges in and attacks him. However, Yoon manages to defeat him. The top student is shocked by Yoon's strength. Yoon then takes him to the other school, and they all study together. At the end of the day, the smart girl apologizes to Yoon's friends for treating them badly. Later, the top student talks to Yoon privately and thanks him for rescuing him from the bullies. He puts on his glasses and tries to remind Yoon of who he is. Yoon is shocked to realize that he was his classmate in elementary school. The top student apologizes for bullying Yoon back then because he was bad at studying and asks for forgiveness. Yoon is happy and tells him he isn't upset anymore since he finally has friends to study with. The next day, Yoon returns to his school and heads to the study place instead of the library. But he and his friends are shocked to find it covered in dust. They start cleaning, and Ms. Han sees them, feeling proud. They successfully transform the place into a clean study area. Suddenly, a bully enters and is shocked that the place is clean, as he used to smoke there. He attempts to smoke again, but Ms. Han informs him that smoking is prohibited and orders him to leave. The bully claims he is a top student and always ranks first, challenging them to succeed academically. When he leaves, Yoon decides to accept the challenge and declares that he will study hard and get the highest score on the exam. Mrs. Han then announces the students' rankings based on their previous exam results. Yoon is shocked to learn that he ranked second to last. She informs them that they have 20 days left until the exams and need to study to improve their grades. They all get motivated and decide to work hard. As they leave, Kim, the smart student, receives a call from his father and has to leave. His father wants him to quit school and start working to support himself. Kim recalls his childhood. He was always a top student, scoring high marks. But whenever he returned home, he found his family fighting because they were poor. Other kids bullied him and refused to play with him out of jealousy. Snapping out of his thoughts, Kim runs into Sima, Leon's friend. They take a walk together, and she senses his lack of confidence. She tells him that he is special, and it's clear she has feelings for him. Kim is happy with her words and thanks her. Suddenly, they encounter the school bullies. The bullies attack Kim because he is weak, and when Sima tries to defend him, the female bully hits her as well. Kim gets furious and tries to protect her, but the bully knocks him down. The bully taunts him, saying, "I'll take your friend. You know why? Because you're weak and can't protect her." Just then, Yoon arrives at the perfect moment and lands a powerful flick on the bully's forehead, sending him flying. Yoon smashes the bully's phones and rushes to check on Kim. However, Kim feels ashamed of his weakness and inability to fight back. He leaves them and walks away. When he gets home, his father calls him useless and demands that he start working to earn money. But Kim gets angry and declares, "I will finish my studies. When I graduate, I'll get a real job. I don't want to end up like you." He storms out of the house. Outside, he finds Yoon waiting for him, ready to help. Yoon invites him to stay at his place, but Kim refuses, saying he will rely on himself. He walks away. Yoon wants to stay with him but realizes he only has 15 minutes left to get home before his mother yells at him, so he leaves. Later, Kim goes to find a job, only to be confronted by the bully again. The bully, still furious over what Yoon did to him, is determined to take revenge and beats Kim relentlessly. Kim panics, feeling like his end is near, until Yoon calls him. Yoon, watching from a high place, gives him advice on how to defend himself. Being incredibly smart, Kim follows Yoon's instructions precisely and successfully dodges the bully's attacks. In the end, Kim lands a strong hit, knocking the bully to the ground. However, Yoon's phone battery dies. The bully, now angrier than ever, unleashes his full strength and continues beating Kim violently. Yoon sees what's happening and rushes to save his friend, but for the first time, Kim gathers his courage and headbutts the bully, knocking him unconscious. When Yoon arrives, he's thrilled to see Kim standing up for himself and takes him home to stay over. But when they arrive, Yoon finds his mother waiting for him, furious that he's late. Kim, the smart student, notices that despite Yoon's strength, he is afraid of his mother. Later, when they enter Yoon's room, Kim apologizes if he caused any trouble. Then, Yoon's mother walks in and informs him that she's transferring him to another school. Yoon feels heartbroken since he finally has friends. That night, as they get ready to sleep, Yoon offers his bed to Kim, but Kim refuses. In the end, both of them leave the bed and sleep on the floor. The next day, Yoon's mother takes him to school and meets with the principal to collect his transfer documents. His friends are shocked but remain hopeful, knowing no school would accept Yoon. He may seem well-behaved, but his grades are extremely low. As they leave the principal's office, they overhear Yoon's mother telling him she's transferring him to Seoul. His friends are stunned and decide to prove to her that their school is good, so she will let him stay. They approach her and tell her that Kim is an excellent student, ranking second in the school, and that he will tutor Yoon. However, his mother dismisses them, saying she doesn't care about grades. She just wants him to be a disciplined student. Then, she walks away. Feeling defeated, Yoon's friends think they've failed, but Ms. Han arrives and urges them not to give up, saying there's still hope. She takes them in her car and drives at full speed to catch Yoon before he reaches his new school. Just as they arrive, a gang of bullies, led by the main bully, appears on motorcycles and blocks their way. They try to delay Ms. Han to ensure Yoon leaves the school, as they don't want a strong student like him to stay. Yoon's friends decide to fight the bullies. Leon gets out of the car and starts fighting them. One of her classmates joins her, and together, they defeat many of the bullies. He then tells Leon to leave while he handles the rest. Trusting in his strength, Leon agrees. Ms. Han is forced to leave him behind and speeds off toward Yoon's location. Enraged, the main bully attacks Leon's friend, but he defends himself using the techniques he learned from Yoon and successfully knocks the bully down. Meanwhile, Yoon's friends manage to reach the new school where his mother plans to transfer him. They plead with her to let Yoon stay, explaining that he is their friend and the leader of their study group. At first, his mother refuses because she is stubborn. However, when she sees Ms. Han, she starts to reconsider. Ms. Han sits down with her and explains that they are changing the school system, eliminating student fights, and encouraging academic success. She asks Yoon's mother to trust her son and his friends, as they have formed a study group and are determined to succeed. Moved by her words, Yoon's mother finally agrees to let him stay, realizing that he has always longed to have real friends. Suddenly, a gang arrives and takes control of the place. The gang's deputy leader approaches the teacher, threatens her with a gun, and warns her to stay away from Hyun, the gang leader, or she will regret it. However, she refuses and insists on expelling him from the school. And in case you forgot, dear viewer, Hyun is the villain of this series. The deputy leader gets furious and orders his men to kidnap her. Yoon and his friends prepare to fight them, but suddenly, Yoon's mother steps in, takes down one of the gang members and reassures the teacher that she will protect her. She and Yoon start fighting the gang, defeating them all until only the deputy leader remains. He then pulls out his gun and attempts to shoot the teacher, but Yoon's mother shields her. The bullet hits the window instead, causing the glass to shatter and fall on her, knocking her unconscious. She is rushed to the hospital, leaving Yoon devastated. Fueled by anger, he vows to take revenge on Hyun and his entire gang. The next day, Yoon goes to school and heads to the rooftop, where he finds Hyun. The moment he sees him, he charges at him to fight, but Hyun's bodyguards stop him, throwing him to the ground. Hyun orders them to beat Yoon up so badly that he ends up in the hospital with his mother, then walks away. One of the guards steps forward to fight Yoon, but Yoon tells all three of them to attack him at once. They mock him, confident that they are stronger, and charge at him together. With overwhelming force, they beat him down, leaving him lying on the ground, thinking they have won. They turn away and start to leave, but then Yoon remembers his coach's words. He had advised him to stay calm and control his emotions to unleash his full strength. Determined, Yoon gets back up and charges at them again. This time, he is stronger than before. He successfully uses forbidden fighting techniques, taking them all down and leaving them unconscious on the ground. Yoon then makes his way to Hyun and beats him up in front of all the students at school. Feeling victorious, Yoon is incredibly proud of himself. At that moment, the school principal was holding a big meeting with all the students and teachers present. Instead of blaming the troublemaking students for fighting, he mocked Teacher Han. He did this because she encouraged Yoon and his friends to form a study group and help each other, and also because she had filed a complaint against the school. He then demanded that she step onto the stage and apologize to the students, warning her that because of her complaint, she might be transferred from the school. Teacher Han felt nervous but still walked up onto the stage. The first thing she did was introduce herself to everyone, but then she firmly stated, "I do not regret my words." She boldly declared that the school system was a failure and needed to change. She revealed that before coming to this school, she had already heard about its terrible reputation for bullying and violence. The person who warned her was actually her own teacher, who had died the previous year. Everyone was shocked by her words. A flashback from a year ago showed her sitting in a restaurant with her teacher. Her teacher, who was kind and caring, told her that she had recently been transferred to the high school. However, she warned Han that the school was filled with bullies and delinquent students. That's why she had filed a complaint against Hyun with the Ministry of Education to get him expelled. Unfortunately, Hyun and his gang killed her to stop her from getting in their way. Back in the present, Teacher Han told the students that she was here to change the school system and put an end to bullying once and for all. Suddenly, Yoon arrived at the meeting, furious. He charged at Yoon and punched him in the face. Yoon then challenged Hyun, declaring that he would put an end to bullying and abolish the school's violent ranking system. Hyun was enraged. This was the first time anyone had ever dared to stand in his way. Later that day, when Hyun returned home, he sat with his right-hand man and agreed that they had to kill Teacher Han, just like they had done with her predecessor. She was becoming too much of a threat. Meanwhile, one of Hyun's gang members, whom Yoon had recently defeated, was at the hospital. His name was Song, and he was there to visit his grandfather, who was old and severely ill, nearing the end of his life. Despite his age and illness, the grandfather loved studying. He kept reading and learning because his dream was to graduate before he died. After spending some time with him, Song left and went to the hospital director to apologize for being late with the medical bill. The director forgave him this time, knowing he was a student, but warned him that this was his last chance. Song thanked him and went to buy a drink, only to realize he had no money. Suddenly, someone appeared and paid for him. He was shocked to see that it was Yoon. Yoon was also at the hospital visiting his mother. They sat down and started talking, and Yoon explained to Song that he had fought Hyun to get justice for his mother. Song apologized to Yoon for trying to stop him, then thanked him. Yoon told him that he had seen a paper with him and realized that Song loved studying. He asked him why he followed Hyun's orders. Despite everything, Yoon offered him a spot in his study group, but Song refused, saying he didn't have time to study. He explained that he needed money to pay his grandfather's hospital bill, which was why he was forced to work for Hyun. Suddenly, Song received a call from a friend, warning him to hide because 2 gang members were looking for him. But before he could react, they entered the area. Song was terrified as they ordered him to come with them. Yoon tried to stop them, but Song held him back, afraid that Yoon would get hurt. He then left with them, leaving Yoon confused by his actions. Yoon then noticed that Song had forgotten his phone. When he picked it up, he saw that Song's grandfather was calling. Deciding to check on him, Yoon went to his hospital room and found the old man studying. Yoon was surprised to see someone so old still passionate about learning. The grandfather laughed and said, "I consider studying my life because I can't live without it." He then told Yoon that his dream was to succeed and earn a degree before he died. He asked Yoon to convince Song to study too. Yoon was deeply moved and promised to do so. The next day at school, Yoon and his friends were watching the news. They were shocked to learn that someone had been killed the previous night. Security footage showed that Song was at the crime scene, and now the police were looking for him. Suddenly, a detective entered the room and asked Yoon if he knew where Song was, since he was the last person seen with him. Yoon told him everything that had happened. After the detective left, Yoon sat with his friends and said, "I feel like Song is being framed." Kim, their intelligent friend, gathered some information. He discovered that recently, several students at their school had been involved in crimes. He then said, "I suspect that Yoon and his gang are forcing them to confess because they are underage and won't go to prison. The students agree because they receive a lot of money, and when they get out, they officially join the gang." Yoon then told them, "Last night while I was heading home, Song's friend found me in the street. He was terrified and told me that Song was innocent and needed my help. But suddenly, one of the gang members appeared and attacked him. I had to step in to defend him, and I ended up fighting the guy." Yoon's friends were shocked by his words. They became certain that Song was innocent and decided to help him. They all agreed on a plan to rescue him and prove his innocence. That night, they put their plan into action. Yoon and his friends disguised themselves as gang members to sneak into the gang's headquarters. They successfully entered the building where the gang held their meetings. Outside, Kim and Sima, Leon's friend, were waiting for them. They stayed in contact and had a drone to monitor the area and update them with information. Everything was going smoothly until they realized that tonight the entire gang was gathered for a meeting. Now, their mission had become much more difficult. Kim starts using the drone and locates the murder weapon. He tells the team that it's hidden on the 4th floor, so Yoon and his friends decide to go get it. However, when they arrive, they find Hyun and his gang in their way. They split up to hide, but one of the gang members senses their presence and heads up to the rooftop to check. Luckily, Yoon hides on top of a wall and waits until the thug leaves. When Yoon tries to exit, he is shocked to find that the thug has locked the rooftop door from the outside, trapping him inside. Meanwhile, Hyun gathers his gang members and announces that Song has been promoted to one of the leaders. He hands him a bag full of money in exchange for turning himself into the police and confessing to the murder of the former teacher at the school. Even though Song is not the real culprit, he is forced to agree because he needs the money to pay for his grandfather's hospital bills. At the same time, Leon and her friend decide to search for the murder weapon. Suddenly, one of the gang members spots them. Leon's friend decides to confront him and tells Leon to run. She follows his advice and escapes, while he fights the thug. However, the bully pulls out a knife and stabs him. Meanwhile, Leon sneaks into Hyun's office, searches through his things, and successfully finds the murder weapon. Overjoyed, she grabs it and prepares to leave, but suddenly, a thug enters the office. Panicking, she quickly hides under the desk at the last second. However, to her horror, the thug spots her. At the same time, Song's delinquent friends go to the hospital to keep an eye on his grandfather. They lie to him, saying that Song is studying. However, the grandfather tells them to go study as well, so they reluctantly leave the room. As they walk out, guilt weighs on them. They see how frail the grandfather is and fear that Song might end up in prison without getting to see him before he passes away. Feeling helpless and unsure of what to do, they ultimately decide to risk their lives and help their friend, even if it means defying Hyun. They head to the gang's hideout to rescue Song. Back at Yoon's team, Leon is running to escape the thugs chasing her, but all the exits are blocked. Unfortunately, one of the gang members grabs her by the hair, slams her to the ground, and she loses consciousness. At that moment, Yoon is still trapped on the rooftop, but he sees the thug kidnapping Leon. Worried for her safety, he decides to rescue her. Yoon starts hitting the metal rooftop door with all his strength, trying to break it. Meanwhile, the thug prepares to leave the area with Leon, but suddenly, Song appears and stands in his way. Song tries to stall him and begs him to let Leon go, since she has nothing to do with this. The thug refuses and punches Song, knocking him to the ground. He steps closer, laughing, and says, "Do you really think you can defeat me alone?" Song feels like his end is near, but just then, his friends arrive to help him. The thug decides to fight all 3 of them at once. They try to attack him, but he is too strong and beats them all. Suddenly, Leon regains consciousness, steps out of the car, and sees Song and his friends lying on the ground with the thug standing over them. Leon decides to risk her life to help them and shouts at the thug. Meanwhile, Leon's friend is still fighting the gang member. Despite his severe injuries, he endures the pain and uses the move he learned from Yoon, kicking the bully and defeating him. Back to Leon, she tries to help Song, and they all attack the thug together. However, he easily fends them off while standing in place, mocking them as if he has already won. But suddenly Leon starts laughing and tells him, "Your end is near." The thug turns around and is shocked to see Yoon, who has taken off his glasses and is ready to fight. It turns out that Yoon broke the metal rooftop door with his legs to save his friends. He also brought his favorite weapon with him. However, the thug underestimates him and starts mocking him. Yoon gets angry, and the battle begins. The thug realizes that Yoon is a strong opponent, so he decides to fight with all his might. He knocks Yoon to the ground, but Yoon counters with a powerful punch to the thug's stomach, sending him flying. The thug loses consciousness. Leon is thrilled that Yoon won. Yoon then checks on Song and asks him to return to school and join his study group. Song thanks them for helping him and decides to start a new chapter in his life. Leon notices that the thug has regained consciousness and sees him trying to grab the murder weapon. She quickly runs to stop him, snatches the knife from him, and knocks him out by hitting him on the head to get her revenge. Shortly after, Kim and Sima arrive to help them now that the fight is over. Yoon laughs at their reactions and feels proud of their bravery. Meanwhile, the real culprit tries to escape in his car, but the detective arrives just in time to arrest him. The criminal pretends to surrender but suddenly grabs a weapon, intending to kill the detective. However, Yoon intervenes and knocks him out, allowing the police to arrest him and prove Song's innocence. The next day, Yoon returns to school and studies with his friends. Everyone is focused and trying their best since the midterm exams are approaching. Even Song is studying in the hospital with his grandfather, as his friends were the ones who paid his medical bill. Days pass, and the exam day arrives. The students try their best to answer the questions. Yoon is surprised to find the test easy and finishes it quickly, feeling confident that he will be the top scorer. However, after the exam, He listens to his friends discussing their answers and is shocked to realize that most of his answers were wrong. Yoon becomes anxious, fearing that he might fail. Later, Yoon's mother is discharged from the hospital, and we learn that her condition has improved. She calls teacher Han to ask if she knows where Yoon is since he hasn't come home. The teacher tells her that Yoon went out with his friends after the exam. His mother becomes worried because she knows that after an exam, Yoon usually goes into shock and struggles to control his strength. At that moment, we see Yoon with his friends, who keep talking to him, but he seems lost in thought and unresponsive. His friends decide to cheer him up. Kim, the smart student, asks him an easy question to boost his confidence. If one egg takes 5 minutes to boil, how long will it take to boil 5 eggs? Without hesitation, Yoon confidently answers, 25 minutes. Kim is stunned and realizes that Yoon is truly dumb. He explains, the 5 eggs are boiled in the same pot of boiling water, so they'll take the same 5 minutes. Why would it take 25 minutes? At that moment, Song receives a call informing him that his grandfather's condition is critical. He rushes to the hospital to see him, but on the way, he is ambushed by a gang waiting for him in the street. They want to fight him because they see him as a traitor for joining Yoon. Song decides to fight them alone, and he successfully defeats them before making it to the hospital. When he reaches his grandfather's room, hoping to see him one last time before he passes away, he is shocked to find Yoon there, holding an exam paper. Yoon wanted to fulfill the old man's final wish before he died. Deeply moved, Song watches as his grandfather answers the questions and manages to score high marks. He even receives his certificate, but sadly, he passes away shortly after achieving his dream. The next day, they hold a grand funeral, and everyone comes to offer their condolences. Yoon is heartbroken and remembers the old man's final request, to make sure Song studies and understands the value of education. Yoon gives Song the study notes his grandfather had written to help him. Overcome with emotion, Song starts crying. A week later, the school break ends, and they return to class. The exam results are announced, and everyone has passed. Kim, the smart student, ranks first, while Leon and her friend come in second place. Yoon looks at his result and is happy to see that he passed. His ranking has improved, and he is no longer second to last. He realizes that there is hope for him to get even better. His friends celebrate his success, and they all cheer him on with excitement. Because of this, their teacher proves to the principal that her study group was beneficial. As a result, he allows her to change the school's rules. The first thing she does is file a complaint against Hyun, the son of the gang leader. The next day, Hyun arrives at school in his car, but Song is already waiting for him at the gate. It is revealed that Song has joined the school's disciplinary committee. He orders Hyun to get out of the car and walk to class like the rest of the students. Everyone is shocked since this has never happened before. Yoon and his friends are thrilled that they have finally defeated Hyun, but Hyun glares at them with a look of defiance. He then recalls a flashback from a year ago when his former teacher wrote a complaint against him. When his father found out, he called him in for a talk. His father told him to handle the situation himself. Otherwise, he would intervene personally. It is clear that Hyun fears his father, as he is a dangerous gang leader. Determined to deal with the situation, Hyun sends one of his men to kill the teacher who had reported him. She was with her son at the time. It turns out that her son is none other than Park. Park tried to defend his mother, but the thug attacked him as well. His mother shielded him, sacrificing her life to protect him. Since then, Hyun has taken control of the school. He introduced a fighting app and forced students to battle each other, with the winners joining his gang. Back in the present, Hyun decides to make Yoon regret what he has done, starting with their teacher, Ms. Han, since she filed a complaint to get him expelled. That night, Ms. Han is walking down the street when Park suddenly appears and tells her he needs to talk to her. They sit in a restaurant, and he pleads with her to withdraw the complaint against Hyun and stay out of his way because he fears for her safety. "You're like a mother to me," he says. "I don't want to lose you like I lost her." Ms. Han realizes that Park is the son of her former colleague. She tries to comfort him and apologizes for not being there for him in the past. She then asks about Hyun's connection to his mother's death. Park reveals that it was Hyun who ordered the thug to kill her because she had filed a complaint against him, trying to put an end to bullying at the school. He warns Ms. Han that she is putting her life in danger by standing against Hyun. Shocked by his words, Ms. Han is left speechless. After that, the principal goes to meet Hyun's father, the gang leader, and apologizes for what the teacher did. He promises to stop her or expel her as soon as possible. Hyun enters the room, dismisses the principal, and sits down with his father. He reassures him that he will handle the situation himself, just like he did before. The next day, a video spreads of Yoon and his friends fighting Hyun's gang. The news spreads quickly and everyone finds out they are students at the school. People mistake them for bullies and start fearing them. The principal takes advantage of the situation, scolding Ms. Han and demanding that she hold a disciplinary meeting for Yoon and his friends. Ms. Han follows his orders, and Yoon apologizes to her, taking full responsibility for what happened. But she realizes they were actually trying to save Song. She gets upset that they didn't tell her, but she reassures them that she's not mad. She makes them promise that they won't put themselves in danger or hide things from her again. Yoon is happy to hear this and promises her that he won't fight anymore. As they leave her office and head back to class, they see that the students are fighting each other. They soon find out that Yoon has told the students that anyone who improves their ranking will receive money. Suddenly, one of the students throws a juice box at Kim, the smart student, trying to provoke him into fighting. The student challenges Kim to a fight, but Kim controls his anger and refuses to fight, knowing it could cause trouble for Yoon. Feeling frustrated, Kim leaves the school. Yoon follows him, apologizing and trying to cheer him up. But just then, Yoon receives a message from Leon. He rushes to the study area and finds Yoon and his gang there, mocking them. Yoon taunts them, saying that they will never be able to change the school because the students listen to him. He advises them to give up and disband their study group, telling them they will never win against him. After that, Yoon's men tear down the posters advertising the study group. Yoon gets furious and is about to fight them, but Leon stops him, reminding him of his promise to Ms. Han not to fight anymore. Yoon controls himself and calms down. At the same time, Kim, the smart student, learns that his father is facing problems at work. When he arrives home, he finds his father arguing with his colleagues. He becomes upset when he hears them calling him a thug and a bully because they saw the video of him with Yoon. Kim is deeply affected by how his father is trying to protect him and realizes that he had misunderstood him. He sits down with his father and apologizes. He then tells him that he has decided to listen to him, leave school, get a job, and help pay off his debts. Meanwhile, Leon and her friend Sima are walking home from school when they overhear some girls gossiping about them. They call them bullies and even bring up Leon's brother, Hwang, mentioning that he went to prison. Leon feels hurt by their words, but Sima steps in and yells at them in her defense. Leon is happy and grateful for her friend's support. But suddenly, Sima's parents arrive and order her to stay away from Leon because they believe she is a bully and a troublemaker. At night, Leon's friend sits alone in the park, sending messages in the study group chat. But no one responds because they all feel discouraged. Yoon tries to reassure them that everything will be fine, but he is shocked to see that his friend Kim, the smart student, has left the group. Yoon feels hurt, thinking that everything they worked for is now lost. His mother walks in and notices his sadness. She tries to comfort him, telling him that she believes in him and asking him not to give up. She reminds him that this is the first time she has seen him truly happy and laughing since he started the study group. Yoon is deeply moved by her words, and as he recalls his memories with his friends, he realizes how much he misses them. The next day, he goes to their usual study place, starts cleaning and organizing it, and restores it to the way it was before. Ms. Han arrives to help him and encourages him to bring his friends back together. Yoon is happy and motivated by her support. He then goes to the factory where his friend Kim is working and decides to help him, telling Kim that he will work alongside him. At one point, Kim is carrying something heavy, stumbles, and accidentally drops cement boxes from the second floor. He panics, fearing that the factory manager will fire him. But Yoon quickly steps in, using his strength and speed to save the situation. The workers are impressed by what he did and start clapping for him. However, Kim gets angry that Yoon is risking his life and tells him to leave because he has already decided to quit the study group. Yoon takes off his glasses and steps closer to Kim, making him nervous because he knows Yoon usually does this before getting into a fight. But instead of fighting, Yoon tells him that he will stay by his side no matter what because they are friends. Kim is touched by his words and decides to return to the study group, leaving the factory with Yoon. As they walk out, they run into Kim's father. Kim immediately kneels on the ground and apologizes, saying that he won't be able to continue working at the factory. He tells his father that after just one day of working, he now understands how hard he struggles to provide for him. Kim thanks him and promises that he will continue his studies, graduate, and get a job so he can repay his father and settle his debts. He asks his father to wait for him to graduate, promising that he will become a successful person. Kim's father is deeply moved by his words and agrees. After that, Yoon and Kim visit Sima, Leon's friend. Kim tells her parents that he is the top student in the school and that their daughter's grades have improved thanks to the study group. He asks them to let her return and promises that he will help her achieve her dream of going to university. Yoon also brings them a gift. Sima's family is happy and thankful, realizing that he is a kind person and not a thug or a bully, as they had thought. Next, they go to the supermarket where Leon is working. Her friend tries to convince her to return to the study group, but Leon refuses, feeling that she doesn't belong with them because she is poor, an orphan, and her brother Hwang is in prison. But her friend tells her that she is proud of her because, despite her hardships, she is strong and hardworking, supporting herself. Leon is touched by her words and decides to return with them. Everyone is happy, and they send a message to Leon's friend in the group chat. He is overjoyed that the study group is back together. The next day, they go to school with confidence, sitting together in their usual spot. Song approaches them and warns them that Hyun won't stay silent and will do anything to force Ms. Han to withdraw her complaint, which means her life is in danger. They all become worried about Ms. Han and start thinking of a solution, but Yoon tells them, "We have to protect her." At that moment, the principal calls the teacher, asking her to come to the school because he has something important to tell her. She has no choice but to go, and when she arrives, she finds the detective waiting for her. He is worried about her, but she reassures him that she will be fine. She leaves him and enters the principal's office. As they sit down, the principal begins to confess everything. He reveals to her that Hyun's father is the leader of the gang and that he funds the school. Because of this, his son can do whatever he wants, and no one dares to expel him out of fear of him and his father. Unbeknownst to the principal, the teacher is secretly recording their conversation. But suddenly, the electricity cuts off and the principal panics. He leaves her behind and runs away. She tries to follow him, but she finds gang members waiting for her on the stairs. She attempts to escape, but they close in on her. They take her phone to erase any evidence against them and decide to kidnap her. Hyun tells her, "I warned you to stay out of my way, but you refused. That's why I'll kill you, just like I did with your old teacher." But she tells him that the police are on their way. It turns out that the detective had placed a recording device on her clothes. They had agreed that he would step in to save her at the right moment. Indeed, he gets out of his car to call the police. But suddenly, one of Hyun's gang members sneaks up behind him and stuns him with a taser, knocking him unconscious. Hyun laughs, confident that he has planned for everything. He believes he has won and orders his men to take the teacher away. But suddenly, Yoon and his friends arrive. They had been watching over the teacher to protect her. Yoon rescues the teacher and tells his friends to take her away. Yoon then decides to fight Hyun alone, but the gang members chase after Yoon's friends, forcing them to split up and fight. Each one faces a powerful opponent, and an intense battle begins. Meanwhile, Hyun's right-hand man chases Kim, the smart student, into the library and shoots at him. Kim panics, but uses his intelligence to try and escape. At the same time, Leon fights a massive gang member who grabs her and slams her through a chair. Yoon realizes that all his friends' lives are now in danger. He tries to defeat Hyun quickly so he can help them, but Hyun is a skilled martial artist. Hyun provokes Yoon, telling him that his friends will die because of him. Meanwhile, the teacher tries to escape, but she is shocked to find the school gate locked. It turns out that a new gang recruit is responsible, but suddenly Leon's friend arrives and attacks him with all his strength, though he gets injured. However, he gathers his strength and manages to defeat him. Elsewhere, Yoon's friends overpower their opponents with incredible strength. Now, only Yoon and Hyun remain. Hyun strikes Yoon hard, smashing him through a wall, then mocks him for being weak. He tells Yoon that his teacher's life is in danger and leaves to finish her off along with his friends. Yoon becomes furious at his words and unleashes his most powerful secret attack. He moves at incredible speed, striking Hyun from all directions. Yoon succeeds in defeating Hyun, knocking him unconscious. Yoon wins the challenge, making him the strongest student in the school. He rushes to save his teacher, but suddenly collapses from exhaustion, having used all his strength. Meanwhile, the teacher sees the gang members waiting for her outside with weapons, realizing that her end is near. But suddenly, Sima arrives. It turns out she had asked Lee to repay the school for saving his life when Hwang took the hit for him. Lee arrives with the disciplinary committee members, and they decide to protect the school. A fierce battle breaks out, and they successfully defeat all the gangsters. The next day, the disciplinary hearing takes place. A ministry committee arrives to punish Hyun, and they decide to expel him from the school. Hyun is furious and storms out of the meeting, only to find the detective waiting for him. The detective plays a recording of Hyun confessing to killing the old teacher. Hyun is arrested and taken to trial for his crime. Before leaving, Hyun speaks to Yoon and asks him to change the school for the better, to make the students study and succeed. The police also arrest the principal for taking bribes and contributing to the school's corruption. Yoon is happy that everything has improved, and he can now return to studying. Meanwhile, Hyun's father, the gang leader, learns about what happened at the school but does nothing. The next day, Song and the disciplinary committee decide to delete the fighting app from the students' phones. Later, Hwang is released from prison and goes to apologize to his sister, Leon, promising her that he will start a new life without crime. Leon is overjoyed. The next day, Teacher Han visits the grave of the old teacher, telling her that she fulfilled her promise and changed the school for the better. Park sees her and is happy that his mother has finally received justice and that the real criminal has been caught. He decides to travel abroad to continue his studies. The next day, Yoon and his friends gather in the library to study. Each of them writes down their dreams. Teacher Han walks in and tells them that the final exams are coming up, so they need to prepare to pass. Yoon gets excited, happy that he will finally achieve his dream of graduating and attending the university he aspires to. He says that if he encounters any bullies in university, he will fight them because he is the strongest guy in Korea. And with that, the series ends.